has come to fruition, meaning that this thing is much bigger than we thought, right? We thought this was a small story, but as we decompose it into that next altitude down, we find out it's actually a monster, or there's this thing that we hadn't thought of. Okay, well, you're going to have to decide at that point, is it such a big monster that you're going to throw it back? Because it's not in flight yet. It's still sitting on the runway. You could throw it back to the product owner to split into different stories, or you could just suck it up, right? If it's, oh, it's not a small, it's a medium. Or if it's not an extra small, now it's a small, then don't worry about it. But if it's gone from an extra small to an extra large, yeah, maybe you're going to have to worry about that. Okay, so this is a point you can have that conversation at low risk involving a small number of people before you actually pull the trigger. Okay, so now, are we ready to take off? Right, we've got the tasks, we reviewed the story, we've got the flight crew, we know who that is. We are going to complete our takeoff checklist, right? Why do pilots like checklists? Yeah, don't forget something. What happens if a pilot forgets something on the checklist? Well, Edwin went all the way to people die, just to, so if you didn't hear that. Yes, possibly, right? I will phrase it like this. Checklists drive consistency, and commercial pilots like consistent outcomes more than most, right? So we are also striving for consistent, high-quality delivery of stories. We want to see those things smoothly transition and keep doing that in a sustainable, predictable, high-quality way, just as pilots want sustainable, predictable, high-quality flight outcomes, right? So we quite often think of this story, because the story is still in the backlog, as definition of ready. And sometimes I think of this as the WASDU checklist. We often screw this up, right? We often screw this up. Checklist, or definition of ready, means that we often have moved a story into in progress, and it wasn't ready. It got stuck. It got blocked, right? If, some of you may have a blocked column on your storyboards. If you find you start putting your stuff in there a lot, then you might want to look at a checklist and say, hey, what are the reasons that those things are getting blocked, right? Let's ask a question to see if this really is ready. Did we remember to ask operations to set up the server? Did we, check to make sure that our event space was available, or whatever? Okay, so you complete the checklist, off we go, take off. All right, we're launching this flight, we move it into the in progress column, and when we do that, the clock starts ticking, right? And specifically here, I'm talking about the cycle time clock, right? The story cycle time means how much time it's spent in progress, and it doesn't start ticking until we are satisfied that we're ready to go, and then we launch, okay? All right, so this flight has now transitioned to execution. Now, what you're looking at here is the journey of a flight, right? The flight takes off, and let's give this up. So this flight takes off. They talk to the air traffic controller a bit. The weather is here or there, and da-da-da. We get some feedback from the air traffic controller. We serve lunch. They talk to each other to make sure there's no turbulence. Talk to the air traffic controller again, route to the next waypoint, da-da-da. So here's some pair programming, and then they talk to the air traffic controller again, and then eventually they're going to come in for landing. Okay? Now, the reason that the main thing I'm reinforcing here is this, right? Right? Air traffic control, air traffic control. This is conversations with the product owner. If I'm doing a story as a flight crew, and we are, let's say it's going to take us 14 days, 2 weeks to do this monster story, and I don't talk to the air traffic controller until the 14th day, and then I show up and I say, right, here is your story. We have successfully completed the duck. And the product owner turns around and said, well, what do you mean a duck? I wanted a rocket ship, right? Now, this is a classic failure of communication, and we spent a lot of effort building this nice duck to find out 14 days later that the product owner wanted a rocket ship. That's a lot of wasted time and energy, right, and rework now. So instead of that, what we want to happen is that at least every day, maybe even more so, this flight crew is going to check in with air traffic control. And they're going to say, hey, okay, we've delivered the beak, right? Here's the beak. Do you like this beak? And the air traffic controller, product owner says what? Yeah, what? Yeah, what beak? Rocket ships don't have a beak, right? And so they quickly realized that they were supposed to be building a rocket ship. They retasked the beak as the nose cone of the rocket, and then they keep going, right? And every day they repeat this exercise. And so this idea of constant feedback, and the alternative to that, right, with avoiding this feedback loop, is to write a giant set of requirements up here, do all the work, and then deliver and test it at the end, and then go for sign-off. What does that sound like? Sounds like waterfall to me, right? And so what we want is just enough detail up here, constant feedback from our customers, learn and adapt, pair programming, learn and adapt, and then deliver the value at the end, right? And the reason that this piece is missing is because when you go for sign-off of this story, which we'll do next, it's nothing. Sign-off is never rejected, because why would it be? You've shown the product owner like 50 times or whatever, 7 times over the course of the story. There's no reason for them to reject it at this point, okay? All right, so before that, let's talk a little bit about what are my priorities, right? I am a member of this Scrum team, so I'm going to work on my task, right? It's me all the time. My task. Until such time as a member of my Agile flight crew says, hey, Ian, I need your help, right? We're stuck. We can't get the story done. I know you're a developer, and I'm writing the test script. I need your help. Could you help me test this thing? Otherwise, we're going to be stuck, whatever. So I would drop what I'm doing, and I would go and help them unblock our story, because it's about this expansion of the we, right? We want individuals to expand out into this Agile as a team sport and even beyond that, right? So here I'm expanding out from my task to my flight crew. And I would keep working on my tasks and my flight crews and helping them unless one of the other members of our Scrum team says, I need your help from your flight crew to my flight crew because we're working on a story that's a higher priority for our team. We would go and help them because that's a higher priority for our team. We've expanded the we now to our Scrum team. Okay? And we would keep working in these 3 layers unless we broke the build, the CI pipeline or something like that. Now we're impacting a wider we, right? We're impacting multiple teams. And if they need help, we would go do that in preference to just things that are impacting our team. We've expanded that we even further, right? And it keeps going, right? We would go from here to the release train, meaning we're impacting our organization now. Our ability to deliver the next wave of our product to the customers is stuck, right? That's the most important thing before we start building more stuff. Like, there's no point building more stuff down here if the current stuff we've already built can't get out the door to the customer. And then, of course, ultimately is our customer, right? We would, of course, drop everything if our customers were blocked, right? And this is the way we want to think. Now, today we're really focusing in down here about this idea of it's not just about me getting my work done. It's about us getting a story done together, right? We're on the crew. We're in it together. We want to deliver this stuff. Okay, moving on. So during execution, things like daily stand-up happen, right? And I want to highlight for you a world of daily stand-ups with Agile flight crews and what it looks like. So what does a daily stand-up look like? Who does daily stand-ups today? Scrum daily stand-ups. Describe them to me. What does a daily stand-up look like? Okay, what are the 3 questions?
What did I do yesterday? What am I doing today? What are the impediments from the work?
Right. And then you'd sort of stand in a circle, go around the room, everybody ask those questions?
Yeah, like we can just, whoever wants to go first.
Yep, okay, yep, all right. Okay, so, but everybody ends up sort of talking in those 3 questions. Yeah, so what you're describing is a traditional Scrum stand-up, right? I go around the room, everybody talks, I ask 3 questions. And okay. Okay, yeah, all right, fair enough. Not everybody has to talk. So what you're describing is a traditional, well, in this case, it's a traditional person-driven stand-up, which is what you get trained in Scrum, right? We go around the circle and we ask those 3 questions. In a daily stand-up with Agile flight crews, we want you to switch into what we call a story-driven stand-up. And story-driven stand-up is where we are, instead of going around the room and talking about people or asking people who wants to update, we are going to the storyboard. And we are going to the highest priority story. Now, we might start in the done column and say, hey, yesterday we got that story done. Well done, team. Quick celebration. Everybody has a cupcake. Whatever's the norm for your team. Awesome job, right? Don't forget about that stuff. It's important. But then you're going to come back to that in progress column. And you're going to start at the top because that's the most important story, right? And you're going to say, okay, who's on that flight crew? Who's going to represent? Maybe it's the pilot. Could be anybody else, but somebody represents the story. And instead of the 3 traditional questions, what did you do yesterday? I don't really care. What are you doing today? Again, I don't really care, unless it is relevant to what you are about to say. And that is, I need help, right? We are blocked. I need help. Now, the problem that I have with the 3 questions is it quite often turns into this, right? Which is a status report, all right? Somebody's taking notes, the Scrum Master. And when they answer the 3 questions, it doesn't have to be like this, right? It's not supposed to be. But when they answer the 3 questions, they tell the Scrum Master. Everybody's reporting to the Scrum Master or the manager or whatever, right? That's not a stand-up. That's a daily status meeting, right? Daily stand-up is not supposed to be a status meeting. It's supposed to be, well, you stand around and hold hands, right? That's required, obviously. But the point is that it's a daily planning meeting for how we are going to execute together as a team, how each flight crew is going to help each other. And it goes something like this. It's like we look at the storyboard. At the top it says, story ABC. Okay, who's got story ABC? I got that one. No worries, we're good. All right, story CDE. Who's got that one? Oh, yep, I got that one. I'm working on that with Joe. We tried to upgrade the Oracle yesterday. Didn't work. We're going to try again after lunch. But we really need somebody who's got some expertise in Oracle who can help us, right? And somebody's going to say, yep, okay, I'll help you. Okay, let's talk after stand-up. Next story, right? Your story daily stand-ups, story-driven daily stand-ups, really are in the 5-minute range, not the 15-minute range, right? You're really focused on what help do we need today? What's the plan for today? Not status reporting. Somebody wants to know the status, tell them to go look at the storyboard.
Yeah, because 3 years ago, the questions in the Scrum Guide were actually updated, and it's not about I at all anymore. It's what have I done since the last meeting to help my team progress towards its goal? What am I going to do today to help my team progress towards its goal? And what impediments do we have? Yeah. And it's quite specific change in wording on purpose. And the general rule of thumb is if you can't walk away from your daily stand-up with a clear plan of what your team's doing for the day, it doesn't work. Yep.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, it's about the we, right? We are delivering value. How are we going to do that today? And how are we going to help each other? Love it. Yeah.
When not everyone speaks,
Mm-hmm.
then you sometimes end up with people who aren't actually engaged in either the story that they're meant to be engaged in, or they could be off doing some other thing that you actually aren't really actually aware of, or whatever, because the pattern just pick up with people who could have thought
Yep.
it was interesting to do, or
Okay.
whatever.
Yeah, so after the 5 minutes where you've gone through your list, right, that's your team's priority, right? And ideally everybody's work is represented in that, right? But after you do the 5 minutes, you ask one question, which is there anything else this team needs to know, right? And specifically that is impacting our ability to deliver this value. And there's probably people who are hiding some of that stuff, and there's a bit of going after that. What I say to teams is, look, if you've got problems like that, then keep doing the person-driven, right? Until you kind of work through some of those issues. And you'd go around the room and you'd find this, oh, well, wait a minute, you're working on something that's not even on our storyboard. So are you on this team or not, right? And you start to draw some of that out. And eventually you'll hit some sort of maturity point where you can switch into that. All I'm saying is that focus on that value delivery and focus on that prioritized list rather than I'm going to give a status report on what I'm working on and why I should be employed here, right? That's not really what it's about. Okay, so let's talk about flight delays. Who's got a blocked column on their storyboard? Anybody? Yeah? Couple, right? So blocked column means that this story is delayed. It ran into some turbulence. This is a reminder to talk about cycle time, right? What we are talking about, and the reason when I said the clock starts, that's cycle time. By the way, our office in Mountain View is right next to Google, and Google has these annoying-looking Google bikes. That's what they look like. We see them freaking everywhere. So this is a Google bike, but we're talking about cycle time. So what we're doing is we're watching the cycle time of this story, and we said that this was a small story. So it's our normal cycle time is a few days, and if we see that the cycle time has gone outside of the limits, this might trigger us to have a conversation about escalating or dealing with something. If you have a blocked column, I recommend against it, right? Blocked columns are a nice place to dump stuff under the carpet, right? Let's put it under the carpet and let's grab something else, right? And then now you're doing two things. Whether you know it or not, you've got two things in flight. And so we don't really want to do that. So leave it on this, is my recommendation. Leave it in the in-progress column. And then when you get to that story, you're going to still talk about it, right? You're still going to say, oh, this is blocked. What are we going to do about it? You should be talking about it because it's the highest priority thing. It's blocked. What are we going to do about it? We should drop everything as a team and go after it or whatever, right? So it's still valid to talk about, and it still needs to be actioned, and it still may need to be escalated to remove an organizational impediment, so to speak, right? Here is a team removing an organizational impediment. For those of you who've seen the movie Office Space, they are beating the crap out of their printer, or fax machine, maybe it was. So essentially, a story that has got delayed, in order to keep it on track, you might need to escalate. You might need to engage your Scrum Master, engage your managers to say, hey, look, we've got promised that this was going to be done. It's not done. We need some help to kind of grease the wheels. But don't dump it into a block column and forget about it, so to speak. Right? It's still a priority in a priority order. Okay. Be careful about WIP. So WIP is work in progress. It's the number of flights that you have in the air at any one time as a team, right? So this little chart here is talking about multitasking. And what it says here is this blue bar represents the working time available for a project, and this is the number of simultaneous projects or tasks you have. So what it's saying is that the green bar is lost to context switching, right? So as you pile on too many things, you've got to context switch between them. And as you do that, you become less productive, right? These are sort of scientific studies kind of things. But it's pretty easy to imagine, right? If you are a developer and you're working on this code, and then somebody else comes in with this urgent thing, you've got to stop thinking about this thing, you've got to spin up a new environment, you've got to start working on this thing, and then you've got to go back to that thing you forgot where you were at, and all of this context switching hurts, right? So what we want to do is try and manage WIP and focus on a limited set of flight crews in flight at any one time. The right number, I don't know. It's up to you, right? We've always said that the right number of story, depending on whether you're doing flight crews or pair programming or just a bunch of individuals. It could be, if n is the number of people on the team, it could be n divided by 2, n plus 1, whatever's the right number for your team. But be careful about it. And that's why we've always said that when it's time to grab something else and take another flight off, right, do we have enough capacity? Is our product owner, this is the product owner here, because they're going to have those daily conversations. And if you keep piling them on, your product owner, who's probably got another 20 things to do, is piling on top, right? So you understand the capacity of your product owner, understand the implications of a person who's working on multiple flight crews and the pull. Because if your flight crew says, I need your help, and you happen to be working on 2 different flight crews at that point, you're getting torn in different directions, and this drives stress into your team, unhappiness into your team. Right? So WIP is a pretty major factor. When we talk about managing sort of key metrics, we really look at cycle time. We really look at WIP and its relationship to team happiness. Okay. Those are your delays. All right. Oh, yeah. So this context switching causes delays because now as you context switch, some story is waiting. And waiting means delayed. It's not flying. right? So if I context switch onto something else, that thing is inherently delayed. It's blocked by myself. It's blocked by me multitasking. All right, landing. See, we're almost there. This story is now approaching done. It's coming in for landing. And once again, pilots have landing checklists. Agile has a landing checklist. It's called definition of done, right? And I'm going to call it the WASDO checklist. We often screw this up. Now, when I say we often screw this up, I mean we move a story into the done column, and what happens? Yeah, what happens if it's not really done? Yep, rework. Somebody's going to come back and say, hey, the customer just called, it's not working. Or it's a defect escape, right? So when your customers are complaining that this thing's broken, it doesn't work, a defect has escaped, that is a classic example of something that may need to be added to our definition of done, because we often screw this up, right? We often. So if you don't often see this problem, you may not need to add this to your list. Now these checklists, definition of ready, definition of done, think 5 to 10 things, not 4 to 500 things. If you're often screwing up 4 to 500 things, then you've got different challenges, right? So, there's a few things that we often screw up. This is really your root cause of your defects. The themes of the root causes of your defects are the things that you're going to be on this list. Now, there's another list that we also talk about when we talk about definition of done, and that's the what cats do list. We can't afford to screw this up, right? So if there's something in your organization that is so serious that if we got it wrong even once, it's so dire, the consequences, that we can't afford to do that. We would always ask that. We would also make that did we remember to lower the landing gear is probably one of those things on the landing checklist for the pilots. That's an example of what cats do. Now, for a company like mine, it would be things like, did we remember to do the security penetration test? Did we remember to encrypt the social security numbers of the customer? Did we remember? Those are the sorts of things that if we get it wrong even once, and that data was hacked or released somehow, serious financial implications to the company. So this can be driven all the way down to the story level. Now, assuming you get your checklist out of the way, the product owner is going to give you the rubber stamp, right? And again, it's a rubber stamp at that point because the rocket ship, you've shown it to them 27 times. There's nothing really to sort of question here. There's no sign-off here. It's more of a, yep, okay, we're good. What's do, what cats do, definition of done, away we go, right? Move the story into the done column, and the clock stops. That's the cycle time completing, okay? Now, congratulations. You've delivered a piece of value represented by as a I need so that I can into the done column. You've tracked it. You've done it in a highly consistent way so that the flight lands. The story is done. Now, after the flight is completed, and you don't have to do this for every story, but it depends. Usually this is an end of sprint kind of activity. We're going to take a look at our flight statuses, right? And what we're doing is we're going to review those cycle times, and we're going to look for outliers of what went wrong, right? So here's an example of a cycle time chart. This is some charts that we generate in Intuit, for example. What you're looking at here is the sizes of the stories as estimated. Now, you might use t-shirt sizes like this. You might use points like that. And then over the course of some period of time, maybe a sprint, maybe multiple sprints, you track the cycle times, 2 days, 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 2 day, average is 2 days, right? What we're looking for in this data is a couple of things, right? We are looking for outliers, right? This took us 12 days. It's a small. Our smalls are supposed to take around 5 days. Why was that, right? That is inconsistency. And what do we like? We like consistent, high-quality outcomes. This one was not that. So what was the problem here? Did it get blocked? Why did it get blocked? Did we get the estimate wrong? Why did we get the estimate wrong? We're going to dig into that a little bit, right? And we're going to try and drive a little bit more consistency, right? But if we know why, right? Joe got the flu. Oh, okay, fine, move on, right? It doesn't matter. We don't have to add something to the checklist to say, oh, hey, Joe, don't get the flu, right? That's not going to work. So really, this is really just a conversation starter. Now, you can see we might even have outliers where it's smaller than we think. We're interested in that too. We're also interested in things like, are these things relative, right? So are our extra smalls on average smaller than our smalls? And by the way, this is the only point that we ask teams to track time. And by the way, they don't have to do anything other than move the story across the board, right? We don't ask them for how many hours it is. We don't ask them for how many hours remaining it is. None of that nonsense, right? We don't want time tracking in any shape, form, except that we're going to look at the actuals of how long it actually took, and we're going to use this to try and understand some of the challenges that we have for consistency, right? So this might tell us that we have a poorly written story. It might tell us that we missed something that we always miss, and we should put it on the checklist. We're also looking to see, do we have like less large stories than extra small, because we want those smaller stories. Smaller stories are less likely to get stuck, right? A story that takes us 14 days, if emergency things come in all the time, guess what? It's definitely going to impact this in a sprint. It probably won't impact this in a sprint, right? So this is going back to your WIP, going back to your cycle time. Okay, you're going to review those escaped defects and things that got blocked, and you're going to look for those common themes, and you are going to then decide, do we need at this point to add something to our definition of done? Maybe not. Do we need to add something to our definition of ready? All right, and you're looking for things that if it got blocked, it's probably a takeoff checklist opportunity. If it was a defect escape, it might be a definition of done opportunity, or both. Right? But essentially, we're just constantly in this mindset of improved consistency and outcomes. Okay, this is what it's all about.